we are going to focus on the murder of a gay icon.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Keeping that agenda going.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're a part of the gay agenda.
By the time you're
Satanic
done with this,
gay agenda,
you will be fully gay.
We will have brainwashed you.
All right, so do you know who Valerie Solanas is?
The woman who killed Andy Warhol.
Yep, the woman who, well, so I'm making that stretch. Most people don't consider her the killer of Andy Warhol. They look at her as one of the first feminists ever. She was a highly toxic, extreme, aggressive, scary, frontline feminist. And yes, she did shoot Andy Warhol and attempted to kill everyone in the room. Like, it's a really crazy story. I didn't know all these details when I started looking into this. But, so she was born April 9th, 1936, and as I just said, she's known as being a radical feminist, but from everything that I read and listened to and saw, she was a normal girl in a nuclear family for at least a few years. I think like till she was like 5 or 6, she was a daddy's girl. Everyone said she was very headstrong, lived outside the rules. Before age 10, she got caught stealing, okay? Well, later in the story, and I'll include this now, people found out that she was being molested by her dad, which now makes sense.
Yeah.
Why she is quote-unquote
Sad.
headstrong, why she's living outside the rules, why she does a lot of the things she does, okay? And some of these claims, there's no way to verify them because obviously she's passed on. This was, born 1930s. But a lot of what I read said she was also being assaulted by her grandfather too, okay? And
Multi-generational incest. That's freaking crazy.
Yep. She
Horrible.
went to public school, got into a couple fights. They ended up sending her to a private school where she assaulted a nun. And
Like, in what way?
hit her, like
Okay.
assaulted a nun. And when she got called up to the office, she freaked out, threw a giant fit, and she was kicked out of that school. So remember, she now has been kicked out of public school and private school. So their next idea is to send her to a boarding school, okay? While she's in a boarding school, she claims that the first and only time she fell in love was in this boarding school. This is also the first time that she comes out as lesbian. Already at this early age, between the ages of like 10 and 13, she prefers to dress as a boy when she's not in her boarding school outfit, or boyish, I would say, right? Because she's still
kind of
developing.
butch. Yeah.
Yep, pretty
Tomboy.
butch. And like, I'll show some pictures here as we're talking through and everything. She looks very tomboyish in all of her clothing. So she falls in love with a woman and, has the normal relationship type stuff go on.
Getting it on.
Yep. And what's really weird is a lot of the stuff I was reading works backwards here, okay? So I went and started looking at this boarding school, trying to figure out a little bit about it. And this boarding school was actually for pregnant underage women.
Oh.
So this is the one she doesn't talk about any of her potential kids, but this is one she literally never talks about. So a lot of people think that
It was
is
her dad's.
her dad's kid. Yes. And this girl that she falls in love with was taking care of her, things like that, and
This is
and
so
whatnot.
sad.
It's super
Tragic.
sad. It's super sad. And the reason why I wanted to give all these details because this helps paint the image of how crazy she is, okay? When this kind of trauma doesn't get taken care of. Exactly. And when this kind of trauma doesn't get taken care of, it festers and grows, okay? And this shows a very clear history of not being able to trust men. Her father abused her. Her grandfather abused her. There's also claims that once her parents got divorced, they got divorced while they were at boarding school, which convenient, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's pregnant, parents separate, it makes it more likely it's the father, her dad's, but there's nothing to confirm that. Her mom gets remarried pretty quickly, and her stepdad starts assaulting her too. Literally every man that this poor girl comes in contact with takes advantage of her, okay?
Gosh, I've heard that with several victims I've heard of, and it's just so tragic. Like, you must feel like you literally can't trust a single man in the world at that point.
Anybody, yeah, absolutely. So she has this kid without much history. I couldn't find anything about it. Something happens. She ends up splitting with her first and only love, and she meets this Navy guy. She's 15. This guy is in the Navy, so he's at least 18, and she gets pregnant again with a second kid.
Wait, I thought she was a lesbian.
She is.
Oh.
She's a self-proclaimed lesbian. But she has sex with men multiple times in this story. So all I can do is share the information I get.
She's traumatized.
She's just traumatized. She could... You know how many straight people I know that have sex with the same... with gay men or whatever, and there's no reason why it wouldn't go in reverse too in gay people. You know what I mean? It's probably
lots of
less
gay people
likely.
have slept with the opposite sex.
It's probably less likely, but like you got to remember too that there wasn't just an open community of gay, lesbian, and bisexual or queer people. This is the 1950s.
Yeah.
Everyone was judgmental.
Oh, yeah.
Women were lucky to have rights in the 1950s, you know what I mean? Let alone a lesbian woman. So,
no kidding.
She starts dating. Did I say she fell in love with the Navy guy? She didn't fall in love with him. But she started dating this Navy guy. She was 15, and she got pregnant again. So still in that boarding school, she has this child. She mothers this child for a week and then gives him up for adoption. Gives him up for adoption to the sailor guy's parents, get this, in agreement for them to pay for her college tuition to a university. They agree. So the child goes with the Navy guy's family. They agree to pay for her college tuition, and she ends up going to the University of Maryland, where she goes for a degree in psychology. Now,
whoa.
Everyone says that she is so smart, like so insanely smart. She ends up having an IQ test later in life where she is in the low 30s, like 131 or something like that. So that's like, 3 deviations above standard. So she is a very, very, very smart woman. She is also a very, very, very traumatized woman. You know what I mean? And those two things together
can be dangerous.
That's the mixture for a serial killer, literally. So most serial killers, like 9 out of 10 of them, are above in standard deviations of IQ, what the standard IQ is, okay? You mix in a little trauma in there, along with some DNA that isn't great for that, and all of a sudden you have a serial killer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, she was a little bit... Sorry for sniffing in there. She was a little bit different, right? So she began university. She went to school for psychology, which makes sense with her trauma and everything. But she graduated, and she decided to move to New York. So everything I read described her as being expecting of people to pay for her, which is very weird. Like, okay, so she went to a post-grad school after she got her psychology degree, okay? And she had a group of friends there in New York, and her friends made multiple comments that she always expected all of them to pay for her. She never paid for anything on her own. She worked at a coffee shop where most of her friends believe that she turned tricks there on the side, so was doing prostitution on the side. Everyone described her as always needing money, okay? Which is strange. Like, I was reading this and I was like,
a drug habit?
I don't know, but I was reading this and I was like, that's a weird way to describe somebody.
I feel like it's a drug habit. That's what makes sense to me.
It could just be trauma, and it fills a trauma void, right?
Maybe.
By either manipulating, conning, or having someone pay for you. Like you're important, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I wanted to share it because it was important in a lot of the stories, right? And the important thing here, too, is that when one of her friends didn't pay, or an associate or someone she knew didn't pay, she would get super mad. And in post-grad, she had a friend that didn't pay for her, and she pissed in her orange juice.
What?
Yeah, pissed in her orange juice. And her behavior really started declining in this post-grad school. So she got called up and had to go to multiple meetings to potentially get kicked out, but her IQ and grades always saved her. She always advocated for herself really well, and she never got kicked out. She did end up leaving that school. Now, I will say, while she was in that school, she was writing for a nearby paper, and that is the starting point for Scum magazine that she is famous for.
Okay, so she started Scum magazine?
She started Scum magazine, which stood for Society for Cutting Up Men. Yeah.
Whoa.
And it was all super feminist and way ahead of her time, dude. And super angry at men, very hateful message, and she got a ton of complaints, but she kept writing there.
Well, of course, because to her, all men are abusers, because that's all. That's her whole experience with men in her life.
Trust me, I know, and but anyway, she ended up leaving that school and moved to Manhattan. Now, in between leaving that school and moving to Manhattan, she turned tricks. She also married someone for a cash transaction for their green card in 1961.
Okay.
She started writing playwrights and made a decision that she wanted to be a playwright. She wrote 2 playwrights. The one that's really important here, it was called Up Your Ass. Yeah. So,
fantastic.
It was called Up Your Ass, and it was very explicit, like extremely explicit, way over the top, way like what I was reading said it would be considered explicit today. So imagine in 1950, okay?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Like it was straight up porn on a paper.
Yeah, because they were, back in the 1950s, they were like, oh my gosh, Elvis is sexualizing the youth. He's
just
Satan.
Just by grinding his hips.
Just by going.
Yep. I know. Super
and
funny.
shaking his legs. Like.
Yeah. It's crazy. But,
so that's pretty wild.
It is. So, but as she's writing and, doing the New York thing and turning tricks, she is writing her screenwrites, and she finds a spot for herself in the counterculture movement that was going on in the 60s, okay? The anti-war, the free thinking, Andy Warhol idea, partying, you know, that's when the club scene was getting big and everything. And she lived in Greenwich Village, which was a huge deal in the time, right, in 1962, and continued working at the coffee shop and turning tricks from 62 to 65. Now, did you know she lived in the Chelsea Hotel for a while? So the Chelsea Hotel was known.
It's infamous.
Yes, infamous for having stars come through there. Like, there used to be people that would find the next star at the Chelsea Hotel, okay? And they were literal hotel rooms that you would rent and live at. And all kinds of people went through there. It's pretty incredible. So this is where she made friends and ended up meeting Andy Warhol. Okay, so Andy Warhol at that same time had essentially a building and a floor that everyone called the Factory. Okay, it was a hangout. It was a forward-thinking, artsy flat where he would shoot his films, he would do art, he would have very forward-thinking actors and stars come hang out with him. You know, Andy Warhol was starting to build a big name for himself, and it was open from 1967 to 1984, the Factory was. So she met people there and was invited up and started hanging out there on a regular basis. So I couldn't really find out that, like, was it secret? Like, you had to have a PIN code to get into the Factory, or did you just have to be known? I couldn't really find out, right? So by this time, she is writing and has written the Scum Manifesto. She's done a ton of writing. She has Up Your Ass Playwright. And she's now hanging out in the same factory, the Factory, as Andy Warhol and a lot of other really famous people. And everyone there liked her, but everyone there was also afraid of her, okay? And Andy Warhol found her really interesting. Like, I found comments where he was saying that he loved to just listen to her talk. So she could rant. She was a ranter, similar to how I was, but she was aggressive and in your face and everything. And he would meet with her just to listen to her talk, okay? And she asked him if she could pitch her play to him because he was making movies and doing art, and he agreed. They went to dinner, and she pitched Up Your Ass to Andy Warhol, and he was about it, kind of. It feels like there's a little bit of a difference in opinion there. She believed he was for it. He almost was like stringing her along. You know what I mean?
Okay.
He had a lot going on, though, too, right? So
Yeah.
he's blowing up. He's making films of his own. He wanted to get into screenplays, and he thought maybe that was the way to do it. Well, she gave him a copy of the screenwrite, the most complete copy that she owned, okay? And things kept continuing the way they were. He started getting complaints about her at the Factory. People started becoming scared, you know, because she would make comments like, men shouldn't be in this world. Men are the disease of this world. We need to rid all men of this world, get rid of all the banking systems and our politicians, and the world would be a much better place. Like, but she would go into gross detail of how she would do it by, like, stabbing dudes and things like that. Like, really off her rocker type stuff, you know what I mean? Which at that time was, like, very forward thinking, and these people were...
It should have been
like,
very alarming for people around her. Like, that's not normal.
You would think, but one thing you got to remember, right, is Andy Warhol was gay. She was a lesbian. This was in the 60s where you weren't allowed to be gay. It was against the law to be gay or a lesbian, okay? So these cultures had very extreme people in them, and they were all breaking the law together. So it's not like they were buddy-buddy with the law, you know what I mean?
True.
So I feel like people got away with stuff for way longer than they should have, right? Well, she got impatient, okay, with Andy having her screenplay, and she started asking him for advances. I need an advance on money. I need an advance for money. She always asked everyone for money, and Andy would blow her off, came to a point where she was, like, starting to be really aggressive and like, you know what, just give me my screenplay back, and if you want it, you want it, if you don't, you don't. And he was like, look, instead of asking for a handout, I'm shooting this movie, why don't you come over here for $25 and you can be in this movie? And she was in the movie, and everyone says she did a really great job, okay? And she claims he never paid her, he claims that he did pay her, but one thing that came out of that after is that Andy lost her screenplay, her script, and she thought he was stealing it. Okay.
Oh, to use for himself?
Yeah, it was proven later that he legitimately lost it. After he passed away, someone found it in his belongings. So he didn't lose it. It was tucked away in this huge chest.
He didn't lose it?
No, he did lose it.
Yeah, you said he didn't.
Oh, my bad. He did lose it. It was found later in a huge metal chest. But as the years went on, she started becoming more and more and more paranoid. And, gosh, what was that name again, real quick here? So she takes the manuscript over to a Maurice Garodius, and he was known for creating porn in the area and like a real artistic mind, okay? And he signed her to a contract and gave her an advance of $500. She signed it on the spot, right? Well, okay. There was a delay in getting it created. A lot of these things move really slow, okay? So both of these men now had her script, and she felt like nothing was moving. She started to get so paranoid that she thought both of these dudes were against her.
Like in cahoots?
Yeah, they didn't even know each other, okay? And she started calling and threatening. And she talked to her sister one day, and her sister said, hey, I don't think you sound very good.
Well, once you start threatening them, they're definitely not going to work with you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, she just doesn't trust anyone. That's the problem. She doesn't trust
anyone, and it sounds like everything I read, like I probably am not giving a good representation of how paranoid and how crazy aggressive she was. And it was an everyday thing to where women that were around Andy and other men that were around Andy were like, you need to be careful of this woman. Like, she is brilliant. She's a bright mind. She is really fun to be around, but like, she's scary, dude. She's really scary, you know? And most times you couldn't tell if she was a man or a woman, that doesn't change anything. That doesn't make her more or less scary. It's just easier to conceal who you are if you want to do something shady like a crime, okay? That's why I was saying that. So she decides to take a little break. She goes to live with her sister, and that was super toxic too. I don't even want to get into those details. Her sister ended up like paying to buy her a bunch of clothes and stuff and take care of her. She moved up to San Francisco and spent time up there. And then when she wanted to move back to New York, and she was like all over, she lived like a bum. She smelled, she had holes in her clothes always, that everything I read said. Yeah. She went to her sister's office and brought all the clothes that her sister bought her, and she was in her like homeless clothes again, and said, you're going to give me $500 and you're going to take this back. Like, didn't give her a choice. And her sister gave her the money. So Valerie ended up admitting that on the drive back to New York, she stopped at 2 different places and bought guns. I believe it was Virginia and Idaho or something like that. So she had like a 38 and a 9mm, I think is what it was. And she gets to New York. She stops at a friend's house, lets her friend know she's back in New York area, asks her to hold a bag, and she goes to work again on Andy and Maurice. And she's escalating now at this point, and it gets to a point where Andy's like, hey, you can't call me anymore. You can't come over anymore, you know? And she took a lot of offense to that. And she got a very similar reaction to the Maurice guy, too. And so the next thing she does is she goes over to her friend's house, asks for the bag. Okay, the bag has the 2 guns in it. And she goes over to, I think it's Margot. It was an actress. I had trouble finding the last name again, but she goes over to this actress director's. She goes over to a producer's place, and there's this lady there that's hooking up with him, like a girlfriend or whatever. And she asks if he's home, and he says he isn't. And she invites her in, and she tells her, literally to her face, that you guys are going to produce this movie. You don't have a choice, and pulls out this gun. And she said, no, we aren't going to do that. We are not going to produce this movie. And she says, look, you're going to do it, or I'm going to kill Andy Warhol. Yeah. This lady doesn't even know Andy Warhol, okay?
No way.
Yeah. And she's like, look, I'm not going to do it. And she says, okay, and leaves, right? As soon as she leaves, that lady starts calling the police and trying to let anybody know, like, hey, Andy's in danger, Andy Warhol's in danger. She's trying to call anybody she knows that could get in contact with Andy Warhol to let him know, and nothing happens. Well, at 4:15 p.m. that same day, she shows up at the factory, and she's waiting around outside, and Andy gets there with his boyfriend Jed Johnson, and they're doing small talk or whatever, and they all get in the elevator together. And Andy has stated that he could tell something was off with her. She was more fidgety than normal and acting very strange. So they get up to the floor of the factory. Andy gets out and immediately goes to get on the phone. Gets on the phone, and she yells like, hey, and has a gun out, and Andy's the first one to see it, okay? And he says, no, Valerie, what are you doing? No. And she shoots a shot in the ceiling, and Andy goes to dive under a table, okay? And she shoots again at him and misses, and then gets closer to Andy and shoots him, and that's the bullet that tears him apart. Goes through his lungs, his spleen, his liver. He gets esophagus damage. Like, it's very, very, very serious. It bounced around
in his body?
Unfortunately.
Oh my gosh.
Shoots a 4th time, and it's a miss. Well, there's multiple people up there, and the 5th shot hits this other person that was up there just hanging out, okay? Next she goes for Jed Johnson, which is Andy Warhol's boyfriend, and Jed had ran into Andy Warhol's office and held the door. And she tried that for like 10 or 15 seconds, couldn't get in, so she turns her attention to his security guard and goes to point the trigger at him while he's pleading, don't do this, I haven't done anything to you, pulls the trigger and the gun jams. Pointed at his head, the gun jams, okay? She gets mad. He said that she's pacing back and forth, presses the elevator to leave, and he says, just leave.
If he's security, why wouldn't he, tackle her?
I don't know, okay?
That's so ridiculous. You're security.
Maybe they're a bunch of gay boys. I don't know.
Why would you hire some,
weakling
as your security?
If they called the cops or anything, they get arrested, okay? When Andy first met her, his first thought was that she was an undercover agent because Up Your Ass was so explicit that he thought that it was a sting operation to set him up. Like, that's how serious these things were in New York at that time, okay? And so she presses the elevator, comes back to him, pulls out her other gun, and he's pleading, no, just no, And he said that she fumbles it with her hand. The elevator gets up there and he says, Valerie, just go, and she turns around and leaves. So, doesn't shoot him, okay? And they get Andy Warhol to the hospital, okay? He dies on the table at 4:51 p.m. Dies on the table. They cut his chest open up his rib cage, and hand massage his heart back and, bring him back. He goes into a 5-hour surgery and has damage that he could never recover from. It's something that he dealt with forever. I think, if I'm remembering correct, he had like a piece of a esophagus that had liver issues, all kinds of stuff, okay? But he makes it. 2 days later, JFK gets shot and killed, but Andy recovers the best that he can. She, on the same day, walks up to an officer at the park and says, they're looking for me. Here's my gun. I'm wanted. And she gives herself up. She gets sent to a mental hospital after she has a mental health review, and within 2 months is released on a $10,000 bail.
Because nobody cares about gay people.
Right, after shooting Andy Warhol, almost killing him, okay? Get this. The second she gets out, Andy had just recovered, okay? And he's back out. He had a very long, 3-month recovery, whatever. She calls him and says, you're going to do my playwright. You are going to shoot my movies. You're going to print my articles, or I'm going to repeat what I did to you already.
What?
I know, dude. This lady is off her rocker. So scary. Can you imagine that, just going through that and then having her reach out to you to threaten you again? He calls the police. She gets picked up. She gets 3 years this time. Thank God, dude. Thank God, okay?
Yeah.
And
I didn't have much faith, to be honest.
Right. And the next, so she gets out, the next 20 years, essentially, the next 20 years, it is a chaotic, never-ending, in jail, out of jail, in mental health hospitals, out of mental health hospitals, in mental health, out of mental health. At one point, she moves to Arizona. She gets charges for talking to the walls, for acting like a chicken in the middle of the road.
What?
Yeah. She
a chicken?
Yes, she is the crazy lady. So I read somewhere that she did have a meth addiction. Okay, she ended up dying because of meth.
Okay, that makes sense.
And she had pneumonia and died alone in her apartment. Okay,
Gosh.
Well, this is why I'm saying that she murdered Andy Warhol. Okay. Andy Warhol went in to have gallbladder surgery February 22nd, 1987. He had a cardiac arrhythmia, and due to the injuries, they could not bring him back. They couldn't do anything. Ultimately, the injuries from that shooting killed him. It killed him 20 years later. But it killed him.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is reading this story and looking this stuff up. Both of these people were so influential and gay icons that imagine what she could have done if she was able to work through her trauma. Society wasn't ready at that time to help her work through her trauma. They just shoved lesbians
They weren't ready to accept gay people or lesbians at all.
Right. They shoved them in mental health facilities and ignored them, pretend they didn't exist. They didn't even want them in the mental health facilities. That's why they let her out right away after assaulting Andy Warhol with a deadly weapon. But they didn't care about him either because he was gay also.
They just didn't want to deal with him at all.
Injustice all the way around. And this is the barbaric laws we're trying to go back to. Like, it's insane in my opinion, okay? But so he ended up dying from those injuries. She died a year and a couple months after him, like I said, because of pneumonia from smoking and meth use. And I think that if she had a way to work through her trauma, can you imagine some of the good things that she could have done? Because
absolutely,
you can use that trauma to fuel you. You can have these really forward-thinking, aggressive, crazy ideas without actually impeding on human rights, like shooting someone, blackmailing someone, threatening someone.
You're fighting for human rights, like feminism, like LGBTQ rights, while at the same time taking someone else's rights from them.
I know.
That's absurd.
I know. She's known as one of the first and leading feminists ever. There are all kinds of first wave feminists that really looked up to what she was writing and saying, not what she was doing, but her writings, because they highlighted such issues in society at that time, and she was literally a genius with a 131 IQ, saw a lot of the issues in society that people weren't ready to talk about yet. And she was really a bright, genius, insanely forward-thinking woman, and it sucks that she was taken advantage of her whole life. It sucks that because of what she did, Andy Warhol ended up dying later.
There's a give and take with geniuses, especially one, like, if you're traumatized like that. Like, I feel like a genius can go bad and be like a serial killer or super evil person just with the wrong, with the wrong cards dealt, it can very easily happen.
Yep. Very, very, very
because they will disconnect from feelings. They will disassociate from what makes us human because of their intelligence. They can look at everything in a different way.
I know.
No feelings.
This is such a sad story. And
it is so tragic
I
for
didn't
both
know
of them.
Any of this stuff. I had no idea that she was this crazy. Like, I knew that she was extreme. I knew, like, the PG version of this, but, like, hearing what she had to go through because of her trauma, every day was a struggle for her, dude. She literally didn't know how to live in society. During that 10 years after the shooting, after she served those 3 years, which in my opinion is light, honestly, but she was calling big name producers, breaking into their houses to try and blackmail them into producing her playwrights that literally never got produced until 30 years after she died, dude. It was made finally in 2014, but she threatened these guys, like, claimed that she kidnapped somebody and was asking for $20 million. Like, the insanity. She was so far out there, so far gone, and I say this all the time that everybody has trauma. When you try and hold it in and keep it a secret, that trauma grows and grows and grows and grows. And she's the perfect example of that. Literally, she gets worse and worse and worse
and worse
and worse and worse.
It festers inside of you. It mutates. It just isn't good.
I agree with you.
Trauma's like a freaking bacteria inside of you. You have to get it out.
It is, yep.
You have
and the only way to get it out is to literally work through it.
Yeah.
Work through all of it.
Feel all the feelings.
Yep. So, let me know what you think about this. I'm probably going to put on the thumb that, the murder of Andy Warhol. And I bet a lot of people are going to be like, what? Andy Warhol wasn't murdered? I mean, technically, he died from his injuries from the shooting,
Yeah, and she had every intention of murdering him.
Oh, dude, she says in an audio, maybe I'll include it. Depends on how good the quality is, because the quality I heard is bad. But she was interviewed by someone when she very first got arrested and said, I wish I would have killed him. He should have died. He needed to die to prove like what society is. He's such a danger to society. So her goal was to kill him. Like 4 out of the 5 shots at him missed. One hit like tore him apart, dude. She went for his boyfriend. He faked her out by holding the door. She shot 6 inches from another dude's head. The gun jammed, and then he was able to talk her out of firing again. Like, oh my God, dude.
That's why I think I feel bad for...
It wasn't none of their time. Like, everything went wrong for her.
Yeah,
that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's insane. What odds?
That's what I'm saying.
I think I feel bad for red pillars and radical feminists because they're both just traumatized. That's why they think that way and feel that way and have hate and distrust for the other sex, because
like
they're just traumatized.
I know.
That's all it is. It's trauma. It's not, you're not confident. Like there's so many issues that go into a person to make them feel that way. And you can see in all of her history, she just doesn't trust men at all and despises them because all they've ever done to her personally is hurt her.
But what's crazy is she despises them, but feels like she needs them to give her like resources. You know what I mean? She always goes to a man. She sees
the patriarchy that men rule the world.
Yeah, she always goes to a man for everything that she does in her entire history. And the couple times she went to women, it was to talk to them and ask them about going to a man to solve her issues. So, like, you can see that weird entanglement of trauma and like insecurity and lack of understanding of what's going on, because like if she had her feminist thoughts straightened, she wouldn't need to go to a man. She would have been able to produce these things on her own. Technically, she didn't need to go to Andy Warhol. He had no experience in playwriting or creating plays. She wanted to go to him because she was a man and she was still seeking for approval because of her trauma through both of her parents, all of her father figures in her life, dude. How twisted.
I mean,
that's so twisted.
I don't know if she would have actually been able to do it on her own. Back when she was doing this, it was very much a patriarchal society. You had to go through men to get anything in Hollywood.
Art was a little different, though.
Maybe. I don't know, but it doesn't really seem like it. All the producers in Hollywood were men. There were no women producers.
But then why'd she go to Andy?
I don't know. Maybe because he was gay and she is a feminist lesbian and she thought a gay man might give her more of the time of day and he's an artist. I don't know. He wanted to get into filmmaking, though.
He did.
Maybe she thought he would have connections.
Maybe. I don't know. To me, it just looks like trauma money. And she's looking for approval from men. Because she's unhealthy.
That's very possible, yeah.
She's unhealthy. She doesn't know any other way except to satisfy men. She prostituted. Like, that's what she went to right away. A streetwalker prostitute, a lot of them do seek approval from men. Normally, the actual escorts, where it's very money transactional, that's much different than a streetwalking woman that will wheel and deal with a guy for services and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different game and different place mentally and stuff. So, I don't know. I was super intrigued by this whole story. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know any of this. This is insane, dude.
It is.
I'll attach in the details and description some of the links that I used here and maybe that audio and stuff like that. But hearing her, she sounds even more wild than her pictures that I'll be putting up here. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Gay icons. Both of them. One of the first feminists ever.
Yeah, that's crazy.